Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer post-match briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Patrick McPartlin after Hibs eased to a comfortable 3-0 win over St Johnstone here at Easter Road. It's now 15 matches unbeaten in the Scottish Premiership for David Gray's side, consolidating their place not only in the top six but in third place in the table with two pre-split fixtures remaining. Patrick, nice of Hibs to ease us in after the international break. We have a very, very comfortable win here at Easter Road.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what else you can say about that other than comprehensive, comfortable, and probably should have been more than 3 goals. Nikola Kurevic, great chance in the first half at, I think it was 1-0. Hibs scored the second right after that, but quite a few chances. I mean, 5 or 6 probably wouldn't have been, an unfair outcome. St Johnstone didn't really offer an awful lot for a team that's sort of fighting at the bottom of the table. I was expecting a little bit more from them, but not to take anything away from Hibs, it was a very good performance from a team that had a lot of boys who've been away on international duty, who've played a lot of football in the last week or so, who've been racking up the air miles, and holding my hands up, I thought when I just saw one change at the start, and not even for someone who'd been on international duty, I wondered whether that could be a problem for Hibs, and in the end, it wasn't a problem at all. Hibs kind of coasted today. And, I think David Gray will be pleased with that. I think when we go and listen to what he has to say post-match, he'll probably say they should have scored more goals. But apart from that, it's a comprehensive victory. It's a clean sheet, 15 unbeaten, as you say. And, with this aim of top 6 and, then European football, job done in that sense, I think, in terms of just advancing things on both fronts.
Yeah, it's ticking along nicely. I think you're right. Hibs actually, for a team that had quite a few guys away on international duty, they looked the fresher of the two sides, and it was an aggressive performance as well, because I think they clearly prepared for the fact that St Johnstone play a completely different way under Simo Valakari as they did to Craig Levein. They want to play out, they want to try and get the ball down, and Hibs were all over it. And I think the first 2 goals came from that. I mean, you could say, people talk about it as St Johnstone mistakes, which I mean it technically is giving the ball away, but it comes from Hibs being so aggressive and being on the front foot and forcing them into those mistakes. Goals for Hoilett and Martin Boyle, as we said. The first goal is just kind of what Junior Hoilett gives you in these games. You're looking for somebody to, kind of, when it's tight and when it's, the longer it goes on at 0-0, it can get a bit, tetchy, but just somebody to step up with a wee bit of quality. And he does. He's always looking for that wee jink inside and for the far corner, isn't he?
He is, and I think there's been times this season where I think Junior Hoilett has been very good. There's also been times where I've thought he's been a little bit quiet, maybe a little bit anonymous. And, I think there's probably certain games that suit him more than others. Personally, I was a bit surprised to see him stick in the starting lineup. Just one change from the team that started Rugby Park against Kilmarnock before the international break. But, I mean, it's just, for someone who's in the twilight of his career, I mean, today was just a kind of vintage performance, I think. It's quite funny, you listen to players speaking on podcasts. I think it was Dwight Gale when he was speaking on the Open Goal podcast and said, the rest of the team can't really believe how good Junior Hoilett is. And sort of, saying, he must have been pretty special when he was at Blackburn all those years ago. And I think we saw today, like, what the players were seeing in training, on a kind of daily basis as well. Just, a real kind of polished performance, just really. I mean, he looks like he's not getting. He doesn't look like he's really getting out of second gear. It's just really.
Everything's very good.
It is, yeah. Just a really sort of impressive individual performance, a goal and an assist, and that's what you're looking for him to provide. That's what you want from him. You want somebody like him to take the game by the scruff of the neck, just to create a little bit more space, put those balls through. And I mean, I think that's exactly what David Gray would have wanted from him today. It's exactly what he got, and. He's out of contract in the summer. He's one of a few who's out of contract, but there's obviously a lot of questions to be asked, a lot of football to be played before then, cliche, etc. But I mean, you can see why they were so keen to bring him to the club, and he's maybe not been able to contribute in the way that you might have imagined, just because of that change in shape. But everyone's a critic here. He's maybe not played as much football as he would have liked or might have expected to if Hibs had stuck with the 4-2-3-1 that they had at the start of the season. But he's really kind of made that sort of unorthodox number 10 position his own, in the same way that Josh Campbell has, I think. But yeah, I mean, today was just kind of vintage Hoilett. Just really, I mean, it was a good team performance. A lot of good individual performances as well. But I mean, Hoilett, man of the match. understandably. So I think it's a really good performance from him, and really sort of helped bring the other players into it as well.
I think these are the kind of games that do suit them, where Hibs are going to have most of the ball, most of the territory. St Johnstone, they don't play, they don't set up a siege, really. They want to come and try and play. There was always going to be space for him to pick up, and when there are going to be gaps, in that final third, he's the guy who's most effective and most kind of, he's most savvy at picking them up, and he did that. He likes to drift into that wee inside left pocket, which is where he ended up getting the goal from. And then, he showed as well that he can contribute to the kind of high press and aggressive style by winning the ball back for the second goal. So a kind of really good all-round performance from him, as you said. And I think there's a nice balance in that midfield three. You see that in Kilmarnock, Levitt, Triantis and Hoilett, they're all ball players. They can all link up with each other. There's intelligence about all three of them. And I think it works. It's not going to be played in every game. I don't think. I think there will be other games that call for different combinations. But I think in games like this, you can see the value of having three guys like that in there. Martin Boyle as well, now 15 goals in all competitions.
15 goals in all competitions, which I'm sure the stat was a bit long to correct me if I'm wrong. I think that equals his previous best for Hibs. I think he's managed on 2 previous occasions. But this is a player who played in about 45 minutes against Indonesia for Australia, and scored from the penalty spot. He then played against plays against China as well. There's a lot of travelling involved. Didn't look like a man who's been suffering the effects of jet lag or coming back home to 2 young daughters as well. This was vintage Boyle, just looked really kind of refreshed. I mean, I'm saying vintage a lot, but that's what it feels like. It just feels like the Martin Boyle that Hibs fans have been used to seeing over the years. It just all clicked today. I think just to touch on the midfield again, you spoke about how good that sort of trio are, but I think one of the biggest criticisms of Hibs in recent seasons has been the midfielders have all been too similar. And I think what you've got in that particular trio that we saw today with Triantis, Leb and Hoilett is that you've got three very good individual players who are linking up well, they're combining well, but they're all doing different things. Triantis can do the dirty work. Levitt can obviously he's picking out the passes, and then you've got Hoilett just ahead of them, just sort of linking the midfield and the attack. So it works really well as a trio. And you've got the likes of Alassane and Manny to come off the bench. You've got Nathan Mariah Welsh there, Joe Newell still to come back. There's an awful lot of options in there, and going into sort of the business end of the season, I think, as he said before, David Gray's going to have a nice headache in terms of who plays, but it does give him options for certain games rather than having to play who's available. He can pick and choose depending on the opposition, depending on the type of game, whether it's home and away. And I think that's something that he's not really had a lot of this season, just through injuries and suspensions at times. So I'm just sort of noticing there's quite a lot of seagulls coming here. So
the infamous Easter Road seagulls are closing in on the Hibs Observer. Feels like we're in danger here. So we're going to wrap up anyway, because we'll go down to the post-match press conference where we'll hear from David Gray. Obviously, the result was rounded off by Kieran Bowie's penalty to make it 3-0, and it was a kind of deserved gloss on the result that I think is more reflective of how the game actually panned out. And I think David Gray will be pleased with that his side kind of made it that wee bit more emphatic towards the end. But as I said, we're going to leave it there, head down to the press conference. So do stay tuned to the YouTube channel and our website for full coverage of that. We'll have every word from David Gray in video and written form. So thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you enjoyed the game. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend. We'll be back on Monday for a fuller review of today's game. So we'll catch up with you then. Thanks a lot. Cheers for joining us.
Cheers.